Wake up, you ain't heard the news. Fast breaks on your screen, always make your moves. Just coming off of week 6 Sunday football. This is Monday, October 15th, 2018. Thank you for joining me here live on the Fast Break Sports Hour here on a beautiful Monday. Man, the weather's starting to tone down a little bit when it comes to the heat out there. Getting some cool morning weather, cool throughout the day. Some low 70s. That's what I'm talking about. Loving it here in Arizona. Was like, man, last couple weeks was starting to get better and better, and finally here we get some rain and all that good stuff. But man, that coolness is definitely making the days a lot better. Sunday is in the books. We still have one more game tonight for Monday Night Football. The Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers, where the Packers are just going to dominate that game. Man, yeah, it's just the way it is. Baseball yesterday, we also had a ALCS matchup. Game 2 of the Red Sox and the Astros, where the Houston Astros took Game 1. The Red Sox took Game 2. And Game 3 will be Tuesday, tomorrow. That will start in Houston Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But today is Game 3 in the NLCS, where the Los Angeles Dodgers will host the Milwaukee Brewers, and the Dodgers now have home field advantage after taking one of two against the Milwaukee Brewers in Milwaukee in dramatic fashion, to say the least, on Saturday, getting that game 4-3 after being down 3-0, getting a couple runs in the 7th inning and a couple more in the 8th. That's just what the Dodgers do. They're going to be looking to close it out at home. Now, I predicted the Dodgers were going to get this in 5. So if they can win these 3 games at home, we're not going to jump to conclusions just yet. They got to get this game tonight. Here, actually, in a couple hours, that game's going to be full tilt. And then tomorrow's Game 4, and Wednesday's Game 5. If they can just hold home field, it should be a 5-game series. I also predicted that the Astros would win the series in the ALCS over the Red Sox in 7 games. That's going to be a little bit more. Still a lot of baseball to be played. I mean, by no means do the Brewers look like they're going to get beat down like that, because they could easily be up 2-0, and vice versa. They could be down 2-0 as well, but it's 1-1. Pretty even matchups. Just the way the Brewers been doing things with all the pitching changes. On Friday, they went with reliever after reliever after reliever. Now, with that, they use a lot of the relievers, and they Hatter, he pitched a little bit more than what was usual. Had about 47 pitch count, and he wasn't available the next day against the Dodgers in that game too. So they didn't have that 7th or 8th inning shutdown innings that they needed, and that's actually when the Dodgers started making their run. So he's going to be available tonight. So we'll see how all that just works itself out in this Game 3, pivotal Game 3. I think this is one of those games where whoever gets this victory, the shifting of momentum could go to that side, especially if LA gets this game with Walker Texas Bueller. He's getting that start tonight. The rookie, the young pitcher who struggled in his first outing against the Braves in the divisional round. This is now the ALCS or NLCS. Both, you know what I'm talking about, man. Let's do this. Sunday football, man. That was, again, every Sunday is a ridiculous Sunday with upsets, with head scratchers. And my upset special was the Dallas Cowboys over the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I was talking about 19-17 as a final score. 40-7. That's what the Dallas Cowboys brought to the table. 40-7. It looks like they finally figured out a recipe for their success. The Dallas Cowboys, man, I mean, I kind of feel like they were trying to force the issue and try to be a team that they weren't. I spoke about it in the offseason, in the preseason, heading into weeks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that I do not know who the Cowboys are. No identity. But I like their defense. Their defense was keeping them in games. The defense was the heart and soul of the team. And all they were doing was getting it through Ezekiel Elliott on the offensive side of the football. Again, I had the Cowboys winning this game in an upset. But it was much more than that. It was domination, total domination of a team that last year we saw in the AFC Championship game that almost beat the New England Patriots to get to the Super Bowl and challenge the Philadelphia Eagles for that title. But this year, especially last 2 weeks, I mean, because now the Jaguars are 3-3. In the last 2 weeks, that defense has looked below average, and that's keeping it lightly. Because against the Chiefs, I mean, it's the Chiefs. You saw what the Chiefs did to the Patriots and what they've done all year. They're gonna put up points. But the Jaguars look like an average team against the Chiefs team that's just been rolling. Granted, it was in Arrowhead, so that's they won't beat some teams down in Arrowhead. That's just what they do in Kansas City. They've always done that, even when they didn't have these explosive teams. So that's expected. So you're like, okay, maybe it's just a hiccup. They'll go into Dallas. This will be a tight played ball game, defensive style. And no, Ezekiel Elliott runs for over 100. Dak Prescott gets 81 yards on the ground. There's your recipe, because they did all that and they opened up some passing lanes. Cole Beasley looking like Julian Edelman / Wes Welker / Brandon Stokely in the mid 2000s. That's exactly the Cole Beasley that the Cowboys envisioned, and that's what Cole Beasley's always envisioned, him being that type of receiver, and he can do that. But what they did is they set up a great defense and they set up a great run game with a quarterback that said, you know what, I'm going to take my chances. I'm going to take off with the ball. I'm not going to sit back here like a sitting duck and wait for something to happen. And what do you know? The passing game opened up. Dak Prescott was old Dak Prescott. This is the Dak Prescott we got his rookie season a couple years back. Is he back? Is Dak back? That remains to be seen. But if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, this is exactly what you got to do week in, week out. Let that defense dominate. Run the ball. Let your quarterback decide whether he's going to run the ball or throw the ball, and give it that 50-50 option. RPO it, baby. That's what the Cowboys have to do. And the Cowboys now are going to raise the question. Are they the team to beat in the NFC East? Because they're 3-3 now. The Eagles are 3-3. The Redskins got a win against the Panthers. I didn't see that one coming at all. So the Redskins still hold the lead at 3-2, and that matchup's coming up down the pipe with Dallas and Washington going for first place. The Giants are 1-5. I pitchforked them after Thursday night's debacle against the Philadelphia Eagles. Not to say that they can't, get something going, especially because this division is still within shouting distance. But you just take everything that's been accounted for. You take away all the evidence that the Giants have provided, and you just got to pitchfork them at 1-5. Now let them win 3 in a row. They have a tough game next Monday at Atlanta, another team that's been struggling. You talk about a 1-5 team and a 2-4 team on Monday Night Football. I pitchfork the Giants, but if you can get that win in Atlanta, I might ease up on that pitchfork. I won't turn that thing. So the Cowboys, this is going to be their recipe. This is exactly what they're going to have to do, and why not? It probably isn't the sexiest type of football, but you saw, especially with the Los Angeles Rams yesterday, that you do whatever it takes to win football games. They ran the ball up and down the field against the Denver Broncos because they saw what the New York Jets did the week prior, rushing for over 300 yards. And they said, you know what? We don't have to come out here in this cold weather and light it up with the aerial assault with our receivers that we have. We can just pound them and just beat them slowly, kill them slowly, killing them softly. Lauryn Hill, the Fugees. That's what they did. And they almost ran for 300 yards themselves. So that Denver Bronco defense is looking like pudding. That's how soft it is. Man, you can run through pudding. You can run through that. And pudding's actually tough for that compared to that Denver defensive front. Can't stop the run. Goff had a very below average game. You can credit some of the secondary, some of the pressure the Broncos brought. But they'll take that. They'll take 200 yards plus for Todd Gurley. 2 touchdowns for Todd Gurley. And they're just going to do what it takes to win. That's winning football. You much rather would win a game in ugly fashion using your strengths as opposed to lighting up the scoreboard but losing because that's not your strength. You know what I'm saying? So Dallas Cowboys, this is your recipe. Ezekiel Elliott run, Dak Prescott, man, 50-50 it, take off. It's all right. You can get them 8 to 10 carries. You got the bigger build for it. Slide when need to, run out of bounds. And that opens up the passing game. Because now they're going to be like, well, Dak can take off for 8 to 10 yards. Ezekiel's going to take off for 5 to 6 yards. We got to stay up front. We got to, bring these guys in the box. And then you let Cole Beasley beat them, with option routes. So it's Cowboys. Don't fool yourself, Dallas. Don't pretend like this isn't a thing. You beat the Jacksonville Jaguars 40-7 for a reason. Now, when you look at the final score and you look at both teams, I don't think the Jaguars are that bad, and I don't think the Cowboys are that great. But the Cowboys are getting good if they continue to do this. And Jacksonville's got to fix this thing. They're looking like the Broncos as well when it comes to stopping the run, giving up over 200 yards on the ground. Not as bad as Denver, but getting there. And you don't want to be in the same level with the Denver Broncos when it comes to run defense, because the Denver Broncos run defense is probably the worst I've seen in the last few years. Terrible. And that's just whether it's scheme or the talent or simply the will to not want to win in the trenches and just attack and not be pushed off the ball. Because when Todd Gurley, going back to that Broncos-Rams game, Todd Gurley, by the time he hit the line of scrimmage on a run, that line of scrimmage was like 2 to 3 yards down from the original line of scrimmage. So he was picking up 3 yards before he even hit the line. And each run, it was 5 yards, 8 yards, 12 yards, 9 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards, 8 yards, 15 yards. He didn't have any of those 40-yard runs. I believe his longest run was 29 yards. But when you keep getting gashed for 5, 6, 7, 8-yard runs on first down, that leaves you, man, on your tippy toes, on your heels, whatever you want to call it. You're unbalanced because now it's 2nd and 3. Now it's 2nd and 2. Are they going to go over the top? Or are they just going to run it up the middle again for another 4-yard gain, first down? Here we go. Leaves them options. And they got to Goff. When you talk about the Denver defense, they sacked him 5 times. The final score was 23-20. The Rams got the victory. But the Rams were up by 10 with about a minute and a half to go when Denver scored a late touchdown. Couldn't get the onside. Denver had chances. If you look at the beginning of that game, they were down 6-0. They bend, but they didn't break when it came to the Rams offense, driving down the field. And they were stopping them once they got to deep in their own territory and made the Rams settle for field goals. So it was 6-0. Denver gets a drive going, gets a deep pass on the left side to Emmanuel Sanders, where it looks like he scored a touchdown, and the call on the field was a touchdown. And he got flagged for taunting because he started pointing at the defender. And when they reviewed it, they saw that he was down right before the goal line. So with that, you're not down at the 1 now because of the flag. You get pushed back 15 yards, so now you have the ball at the 16. So that killed that drive, and you had to settle for a field goal. You talk about if you don't get that taunt flag. Now, obviously, they still got to punch it in. But from 1 yard out, I'll take my chances. You can run that thing 3 or 4 times. They're probably going to get it on the first try, and that's a touchdown. And what was the final score? 23-20. So that loomed to be big. Emmanuel Sanders has got to not do that. That cost his team. Now, hindsight being 2020, if that's a touchdown, do the Rams play a different style of offense, knowing that they're down now 7-6? Because never were the Rams really in danger of losing the lead. It was always a double-digit lead, and then the Broncos would score. Then it was a single possession, a touchdown or whatnot. But they were up 10 points most of the game, at a bare minimum, until towards the end. So you can't say, well, that touchdown would have been 4 more points, they would have won, because we don't know what style of offense the Rams would have ran and if they would have had their way against the Broncos. I'll give the benefit of the doubt to the Rams being able to figure it out and do something differently to score more than 23 points. They knew that's the number they needed. That's the number they got to, and they got the victory. It's a tough road to win. Anytime you go to Denver, it's like I was speaking about the Kansas City Chiefs. It doesn't matter if their teams are good or bad. It's tough to win in Kansas City. And say what you will about the Denver Broncos, it is still tough to win in Denver. And you saw that with the Rams, and you saw that with the Chiefs a couple weeks back on Monday night. Now, if the Broncos would have played like that against the Jets, Denver should have probably won that game. If they would have played like the way they played against the Rams and the Chiefs, playing up to the competition, they probably should have won that game against the Jets. That loss to the Ravens, I just think it's just one of those things. You're going to lose to the Ravens. Baltimore's a pretty good team. They had their chances, but we're not going to delve into that. So back to the Cowboys and Jaguars. This is your recipe. Jaguars got to fix the defense. And I mentioned this. Do the Jaguars now got to look for a quarterback? Do the Jaguars got to say, you know what? Blake Bortles is below average. All we need is an average to decent quarterback to run this offense, and we could go places. Because our defense is taking a hit because our offense is going 3-and-out or creating turnovers. And that's not a good thing when your offense creates turnovers, you know. Usually you want your defense to create a turnover. So, what do the Jaguars do? A couple weeks until the trading deadline. And, you know, I threw it out there that they should, you know, go into the Eli Manning sweepstakes and see if they can, you know, pull him out of New York. I doubt it at the end of the day when you look at it. It's just something you throw out there, you see if it sticks to the wall. Because at this point, there are a lot of options that are better than Blake Bortles. Because I've seen good Blake Bortles this year in a couple games, but the other 4 games I've seen below average quarterback play. And that seems to be normal Blake Bortles. So again, if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, are you going to waste this young talent? And you do have some veterans on that line and on that defense as a whole, and you still haven't got Leonard Fournette back, so that's probably a piece of the puzzle that's going to factor into this season. But when you look at all of that put together, is it worth it to go through a season where you probably should be 11-5, 12-4, worst case scenario, and be a contender for your division, winning the division? Now, I mean, when you look at the division, they're still up there. They're 3-3 with the Titans. They're 3-3 with the Texans. So you don't sound the alarm when it comes to that. But you don't want to be 6-6. You don't want to be 7-7 when you come down the stretch, because then you might be fighting for a wild card spot and probably won't even get there if you're 8-8, 9-7. So they have to look at every option. Offensively, that's where the issues are. Now, that's not an excuse for them to give up so many yards on the ground, but that's what Cowboys do. You're going to get 100 from Ezekiel Elliott from the Cowboys. That's just what's going to happen. Now, the Cowboys figured it out and said, we can get 100 from Zeke. We can get another 50 to 60 from Dak. We're good to go. Now, they ended up getting 80 from Dak, but, man, that's you have to make the defense feel like that's an option where Dak Prescott can, you know, gas you for a 15-yard run out of nowhere on any play. That's going to open up the rest of your offense. And if you're doing that consistently, you're able now to start games throwing the ball, because now they're going to have to respect it. So Cowboys, hell of a win, 40-7 over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Don't sound the alarm for Jacksonville, but you got to figure something out this week. Denver Broncos, speaking of Broncos and Rams, Denver Broncos, you got to sound the alarm right now, because that pitchfork is this close away. And you have a game on Thursday. That's why the pitchfork is this close away. And, you know, for those of you that are like, well, I'm talking about the Broncos. They played the Rams. It's a pretty big game for both teams. And now we have that Thursday night game going to Arizona. It seems like a game you should win. You know, Even if you're an average football team, you should win in Arizona. Just like if you were an average football team, you should win at New York against the Jets or the Giants for that sake. So Thursday night, that's going to be the pitchfork night for the Cardinals. Already got the pitchfork. You guys already know that. The Niners, they play tonight. They already got the pitchfork. The Raiders, they had the pitchfork before yesterday's game, and we'll get to that. You had those three teams with pitchforks. The Buffalo Bills just got their pitchfork just because they gave the game to the Texans yesterday. Because Deshaun Watson had a horrible game. But that defense kept them in the game and finished off the Buffalo Bills, especially when Josh Allen got pulled out of the game because of some sort of elbow injury. And Nathan Peterman was Nathan Peterman. That's just what he does. He had a beautiful touchdown pass, but he had 2 picks at the end of the game. One that caused them the game with that pick 6, and then they're down by 7. So actually, both picks actually caused them the game because that second pick, obviously, trying to come down and tie the game, but they couldn't do that. It was intercepted. So the Broncos, this is not only is it a must-win, but it's a game they should win. But again, they should have won that game against the Jets, against a rookie quarterback, against a team that's rebuilding. Look at the Cardinals, a team that's rebuilding. Offense is struggling. Now, the final score against the Vikings yesterday wasn't too bad. I don't know what it is about the Vikings and playing to their competition. Obviously, they lost to the Bills a couple weeks back. And they won by 10 points, but 27-17, that's a little too close for comfort when we talk about the Arizona Cardinals and then them being at home. If you want to be taken seriously, Minnesota, to be a dominant team, a Super Bowl contender, you have to beat the Cardinals by 3 touchdowns, not by 10 points. So that's the thing for Denver. That's the challenge now. This is it. And John Elway talked about it today. He said, this is it. We're on life support. This is a do or die game for us. Because you started the season off 2-0. Now you've lost 4 in a row. You've lost a couple ugly games. You've given up 600 yards of rushing in the last 2 weeks. That's ridiculous. That's horrible. And now you've lost 5 in a row. You're 4 in a row. Maybe I cursed them. Maybe it's going to be 5 in a row. By the way things are going, by the way they play against their competition, it might be 2-5 for the Denver Broncos. And then that's the pitchfork. Not only is it the pitchfork, but I think the coach is out of here. Vance Joseph. They're not following your lead, whatever that is. You can blame the coordinators. At the end of the day, you were going to get fired at the end of the season last year. Some odd reason they brought you back. And I'm like, okay, we're going to give this guy a chance. And it looked like he was more of a leader coming into training camp, preseason, first couple weeks. If he wins the first couple weeks, you could easily talk about this team being 0-6. Now on the flip side, you could easily talk about them being 4-2 as well, because you could argue that they should have beat the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. Now the Jets game, they got blown out, but they should have beat the Jets. Let's be real with it. In that Rams game, it was, I expected worse. So I don't know what to take from that game yesterday. 23-20. They almost gave up 300 yards rushing, but they only gave up 23 points, so you don't know who to place the blame on. People place the blame on Case Keenum. He has part of the blame, but not yesterday. I was looking up this stat, and take stats for what they are, but when you look at the quarterbacks that are up there, when I mention this stat, you can be like, how is he up there? But the top 3 quarterbacks, when you talk about passes completed of 20 yards or more, the top 3 quarterbacks are as follows: Patrick Mahomes, Jared Goff, and then Case Keenum's number 3. I'm just keeping it real. Passes over 20 yards completed after 6 weeks, Mahomes, Goff, and Keenum. So this whole thing where he's a dink and dunk quarterback, that's false. He's throwing it downfield. And I'll go a step further. Quarterbacks that completed passes 40-plus yards Case Keenum is in the top three again with Goff, with Brady, and he's tied with Mahomes. He's actually tied with all those guys. So I say top three, but they all have 6 passes of 40 yards or more completed after 6 weeks. So that's basically won a game. The issue is Case Keenum is not comfortable. Case Keenum is coming out there and he's playing scared because he doesn't trust his offensive line. Now, that's not an excuse. You have to produce. You know this going into the game that your offensive line is trash. Your left tackle is trash. Another bad draft pick by John Elway. I'm going to get off the Broncos from now because we got to get to all the other games. But this is the do or die game for the Broncos on Thursday in Arizona, in the toaster. This is it. Denver Broncos at the Cardinals, and we talk about that more on pregame Thursday night football. And it's right down the pipe. But we still got week 6 to finish off. Like I said, we got the San Francisco 49ers going to Lambeau Field, where the Packers should win that game 38-10. We'll see what happens. We've been surprised before, but I don't think this one's going to be one of those. Though Kyle Shanahan's going to do his best to put up points against that Packers defense. Dolphins and the Bears, man, they put up a hell of a game yesterday, especially in the fourth quarter. It looked like the Bears were just going to dominate the game once they got that 21-10 lead, and Osweiler was looking like he was Osweiler, and they started trading touchdowns back and forth. That game at the end of the game was looking like the Patriots and Chiefs. I was like, man, these guys are going back and forth, and then the game ends up going to overtime with teams tied at 28, and Kenyon Drake fumbles at the 1. The craziest thing I've ever seen. Not ever seen, but it's one of them crazy things. You're like, man, how does that happen? He just lost the ball at the 1 yard line as he's falling down. Bears recovered, drove down the field, missed a long field goal because of some iffy play calling. Once they got to the 37-yard line of the Miami Dolphins, they ran field goal, and they got like 3 yards on those run. Kicked the field goal, missed it because they optioned for a 53-yard field goal, which is normal, but at least try to throw the ball a little bit, get closer. Dolphins proceeded. Brock Osweiler hit Drake on a crossing pattern, and hey, man, that picked up Drake. After that fumble, he got them closer to field goal range, and it was well noted that Brock Osweiler went to the sideline before that drive and said, you know what, we're going to need you, man. Put that mistake behind. We're all with you. We need you. You're a badass running back. Let's do this. And he helped them get to field goal range, and they were able to complete the comeback and win. And Brock Osweiler had a hell of a game when you look at his stats. He had 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, 380 yards, I believe. The game of his life. But 2 of those touchdowns were Albert Wilson doing the damn thing. Like Tecmo Super Bowl type thing, where it's a 5-6 yard pass, crossing pattern, and then he's just like doom, trying to figure out a way to get to the end zone, and he did on 2 consecutive drives. Well, not consecutive drives, but 2 consecutive scoring drives. He was able to do that and get that Dolphins team a tie to get into overtime and create those big stats for Osweiler. And now Tannehill, there's a question mark there because Adam Gase said he's not sure the extent of Tannehill's injury or whatever's holding him out. So it might look like Osweiler's going to go again. And if he does, and if he plays well, is there going to be a controversy now? Because you have to remember, Osweiler and Adam Gase had that connection from their days back in Denver. That's the reason why Osweiler's in Miami, because of that connection. Because there's nothing Brock Osweiler did last year for you to say he should be a backup quarterback. Maybe a 3rd string, just based on how he played. But then again, that could be the offensive line for the Denver Broncos. You see how all these quarterbacks are just looking bad when they line up under center for the Denver Broncos? They look a little bit worse than the year before. I don't know. Maybe it's the Broncos. I mean, I know that offensive line is horrible. But the Dolphins were able to get that victory, 31-28 in comeback fashion, and that Bears defense was not the Bears defense. But hey, man, it's still young defense. Let them grow. This is going to happen. They're not going to shut teams down at 10 points every week. It's not going to happen. Now, you kind of wish the Bears would have done that to the Dolphins because the Dolphins don't have that impressive offense with Brock Osweiler in the game as well. But it just broke apart. They weren't able to finish them off, and that just goes to being a young team. If you're the Chicago Bears, you're a young team. You're gonna have to learn to win these games. You should have beat the Packers week 1. You couldn't finish them off. You should have beat the Dolphins yesterday. Couldn't finish them off. You're looking at 5-0, but because you're a young team, you're 3-2 now. And then you got homeboy Tom Brady going into your town next week. Might be 3-3. That's just the way the cookie crumbles when you're a young team and you can't finish teams off. Chargers at the Browns. Chargers dominating the Browns. I thought the Browns were going to put up more of a fight. They didn't. It's like every time I turned into that game, the Chargers had the ball every time. And then the one time I see the Browns had the ball, Baker Mayfield was throwing a pick. And that's just the way the game went. And you saw the difference in those two teams. You saw a team in the Chargers who are starting to look like that championship contender. And you saw a Browns team that's barely learning how to win. It goes with the whole Bears thing. Young team, you got 2 victories. And you probably should have 3 had you beaten the Raiders. You should have beat the Raiders, but you let the Raiders come back. I'm talking about the Browns a couple weeks ago. We're able to get the victory against the Ravens last week. And then you come up to this game, and I didn't expect you to beat the Chargers, Browns, but I didn't expect you to lose 38-14. And Phillip Rivers did whatever he wanted. Melvin Gordon was a beast yesterday. And they kept running to the outside because they found out the Browns can't cover anybody on the outside when we talk about the run game. They did it with reverses. They did it with sweeps. They did it with tosses. They did anything they wanted to the outside to the Cleveland Browns. And that's what the Chargers did. The Chargers are now 4-2, 4 in a row, looking like a contender. But let's all remember, guys, I picked the Chargers to go to the Super Bowl this year against the New Orleans Saints. Phillip Rivers against Drew Brees. Looking pretty good, right? Hey, that's just what I saw. I said Phillip Rivers was going to be the MVP this year. Looking pretty good, man. Go look at the numbers. Go check it out. I'm just saying. It's his time. He's ready. Seahawks, the Raiders in London. That is actually just the Seahawks playing practice in London. 27-3. That was a game, too, where every time I turned to it, the Seahawks had the ball. Or Derek Carr was throwing a 3-yard pass incomplete to out of bounds or whatever. That's what that was. Raiders, I pitchforked them 2 weeks ago. I actually pitchforked them like week 1, week 2, right after the Bronco loss, because they just look like a team that's disinterested and has no leadership and really doesn't have an identity like a lot of these other teams. Now, if you're a young team with a young rookie quarterback and you're struggling, man, that's fine. But when you're a team like this with veterans and you're 2 years removed from having almost home field advantage, should have been, but you didn't get it because your quarterback got hurt, lost the last game, and haven't been the same ever since. It's like when Derek Carr broke his leg at the end of the season in 2016, that also shattered all of the Raiders' future and hopes and dreams for 17 and 18, and possibly for 19, because it doesn't look good. 1-5 now, all the Raiders, pitchfork since weeks back. And the Seahawks, 3-3. They look like that's what they're going to be, 8-18, 9-7 at best. And give them props. They dominated a team that is disinterested and really isn't that good. The Steelers and the Bengals, this was a hell of a game. Now, it was 21-20 with, it was like 16 seconds left. And the Steelers had the ball at the 33-yard line, and they're trying to get a little bit closer to get that field goal. They were on a wonderful slant. Now, they had a timeout, so they were able to do this play. I think that had they not had a timeout, they probably wouldn't have ran this play just for the fear that he could have got tackled in the middle of the field, and they would have been able to set up the field goal to win the game because that's where they were at. Beautiful slant ran by Antonio Brown. Some people say it was a pick play, but you see that play often. You're not going to call that. End of the game, was it a pick? I don't know. Looked like it. It is what it is. It is what it isn't. I said it again. I'm sorry. And he took it to the house. Perfect throw, perfect route, down the middle of the field, scored a touchdown with like 7 seconds left. Game over. 28-21 after they got the 2-point conversion because they were down 1 point in that game, by 1 point. And they finished them off with a touchdown. And that was a hell of a game. Antonio Brown coming up big at the end of the game. Like I mentioned, the Arizona Cardinals losing to the Minnesota Vikings 27-17. never really was a doubt, but just the Vikings could never really drive it in and say, we're going to dominate the Cardinals, because that's what it should have been. It should have been 37-17, not 27-17. Again, the game was never a doubt, but it just was. They just did what they had to do to win the game, which at the end of the day, that's all that matters. But it's one of those things where you don't want to get used to playing down to your opposition if you're a team that's considered, and if you consider yourself a championship team, you have to dominate these teams that have terrible offenses, that have rookie quarterbacks that are learning the game, so to speak, and where defenses are average, new coach, rebuild. You should win this game in the first 2 or 3 quarters. But you let them hang around, you win by 10 points. Doesn't look that impressive. At the end of the day, it's a victory. Minnesota Vikings keep trending into the right direction, but just want them to beat teams the way they should if they want to be considered a top 2 or 3 team in the NFC. Now you can say the same thing about the Rams and say, well, they're undefeated. They did what they had to do, and they did it on the road. They beat the Denver Broncos. Many of you will probably say, well, they should have beat the Broncos 40-10 if they would have done what they were supposed to do. They're on the road. It's bad weather. There wasn't really much snow on the ground, but it's still 25 degrees to 25 degrees. I think at game time it was 22 degrees on the field. But that's going to serve them well. Now, I doubt they're going to have to go on the road and play in a cold environment in the playoffs, because they're probably going to have home field. And if they don't, the Saints will probably have home field. And New Orleans doesn't play outside, so they don't really got to worry about playing in the cold, unless for some odd reason a team like the Philadelphia Eagles or the Packers are able to get that one spot. Different story. Now you got to go play in the cold in January, but that's not going to happen. So the Rams did what they had to do, and to me, the Denver Broncos aren't the Cardinals, so I don't want to hear that. Well, the Denver Broncos are right now a below average team, but to me, they're more so a team that should be slightly above average. They just got to get some things figured out. If they get them figured out, I don't know. It doesn't look that way, but all it takes is a win for the Denver Broncos on Thursday. But again, we won't talk about that till pregame on Thursday. Panthers and the Redskins. This game surprised me, as I spoke earlier, because I felt as if the Panthers were going to dominate the Redskins, because I'm thinking the Panthers are that team as well that's going to be there towards the end, a Final Four team in the NFC. But they proved me wrong. That or the Redskins are just a team that's good one week, horrible the next, good Jekyll and Hyde. That's what the Redskins looking like right now. And the score was 23-17, but the Redskins really never had that fear of we're going to lose this game. It just looked like the Panthers had one of those games where they were non-efficient on the offensive side, whether it's play calling, whether it's bad decision making, because Cam Newton did make a couple bad decisions, and they're continuing to not use Christian McCaffrey the way he should be used, and he should get the ball at least 20 times a game, at least, and that's a combination of run and pass, and he ended up getting 13 touches, I believe. So there's that. You're setting yourself up for failure for the Carolina Panthers and Christian McCaffrey, who's your most dynamic player on the offensive side, is only getting 13 touches. Now if that's 13 receptions, it's different, but it's not. You're talking about 8 carries, 5 receptions. That's just not going to cut it. That's going to be more so 14, 15 carries and 5 receptions. That's the way you're going to see the most out of Christian McCaffrey. You saw when he gets the ball over 20 times, he's going to run for over 150 yards. I don't care who he was playing against. But he's a workhorse, and he can do that. So that's the recipe for success for the Carolina Panthers, because Cam Newton he's not going to throw for 300 yards. That's not what he does. He can't do that. He's going to beat you with his legs, with his decision-making when it comes to the RPO, and he's probably going to throw for like 210 yards. That's what he does. That doesn't mean he can't gas you. Those 210 yards will be important because he's running for another 50. Christian McCaffrey's running for another 70. So that's part of the game, and Cam Newton needs to get back to that, and that play calling needs to get back to that. Again, the Redskins, give them credit for stepping up to the plate and shaking off that loss to the Saints and coming up big against the Panthers at home. That's what Alex Smith and Paul Richardson and Adrian Peterson does. And that looks like the trend for Adrian Peterson as well, where he has one big game, like yesterday he had 97 yards rushing, and then he'll have a game where he runs for like 22 yards. Then the next game he'll get to 100, then he'll run for like 30 yards. That's just maintenance. He's an older running back, and if I were them, as opposed to hitting my head on the wall the week that he has a big game, maybe next week say, you know what? We're not going to give you the ball 18 to 20 times and run for 25, 30 yards. We're going to give it to you 8 to 10, and we're going to let the other running backs carry the load as well. Maybe that'll work, because there's no point, and the proof is there. Every other game, he's averaging 2.5 yards a carry. So if that's because of his age, understand you got to slow it up a little bit. Give him less carries that week that he's struggling. Speak about age. I didn't talk about it with the Dolphins and the Chicago Bears, but Frank Gore, 15 carries for 101 yards. You know, I was talking. My pops was like, "Well, that's the reason why Drake ain't getting his." I'm like, Drake ain't getting his because Frank Gore's doing the damn thing. You know, it's not Frank Gore's fault that he's averaging 6-7 yards a carry when he's out there on the field. If you're the Dolphins, you got to feed the guy that's doing it, and Frank Gore continues to do it. The dude is like 78 years old, and he's getting the job done. Peterson's getting the job done every other week. Frank Gore is just, give me the ball, and I'm going to run for 5 or 6 yards because I'm a beast with it. Frank Gore looking nice. These old running backs looking pretty nice. I think they got to watch the Adrian Peterson thing and tone it down a little bit the game after he has a big game. That's just the trend right now. That's just all I'm seeing. The Buccaneers and the Falcons, like I mentioned on Friday's Full Force Football Friday, and that's every Friday, Full Force Football Friday on the Fast Break Sports Hour, where we talk about nothing but football. I talked about Buccaneers Falcons was going to be a high scoring game. Nobody can stop anybody, and that's what it was. You know, Falcons 34, Tampa Bay 29, and with that, Mike Smith got fired, defense coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's always got to be a scapegoat. You know, if something's not producing, there's going to be a moment where Dirk Cutter's next, you know, because you can't keep giving up all these yards, all these touchdowns. And that was happening even when Ryan Fitzpatrick was doing his thing. They were still giving up 30 points. They did it again. And that's just going to continue. Any team the Buccaneers play, it's going to be high scoring. Any team the Falcons play, it's going to be high scoring. Because the Falcons can't play defense either. But they got the win at home. And they'll have another home game next week against the Giants, like I mentioned before. They got to keep this thing going because they're 2-4 now. They got to make up a lot of space. They got to make up a lot of ground to get back and just into the playoff talk. I think it's a little far-fetched to say that they might be in the talks for the division. It's still early. I know the Saints are 4-1, and they're 2-4, 3 games back are the Falcons, with 1 loss in hand to the Saints. So it's a long season. I understand that. And if the Falcons are able to reel off 3 or 4 straight wins, then maybe that might change, you know, the scenery when you talk about the NFC South. But until then, again, the proof is in the pudding. You're 2-4. You're not a contender for the division at this point. Right now, you're a contender for the basement in that division. So now it's just getting that confidence and getting back rolling to trying to become a wild card team if you're the Atlanta Falcons. And Ravens and Titans, man. What the heck? Look, I knew this game was going to be like a 24-17 game, 20-17 game, because the Titans, that's what they do. And the Ravens, they just figure things out one way or another to win games or to lose games. The Titans are so predictable, so boring. They have not grown, and that's taking a toll on their defense. Because, again, you know, the defense gave up 21 points. Okay, whoop-de-doo. If your defense gives up 21 points, you should win a game because you should be able to score 24 points in the National Football League. 22 points. That's all it would have took for you to beat the Ravens. You lost 21-0. Marcus Mariota gets sacked 11 times. That's a Baltimore Ravens franchise record. That's one sack away from the all-time franchise record or NFL record in sacks, where it's 12, and I believe the New York Giants set that a few years back against Jay Cutler. I believe. They don't hold me to that. I just remember watching that game, and they kept sacking Jay Cutler in the Chicago Bears. And the Titans' offense just is not going anywhere soon. I thought Mike Vrabel was going to bring some more flashy play from the offensive side, bringing Dion Lewis over. Corey Davis had the second year looking like he was going to explode. They're not throwing to him. And when they do, it's off target. They have to figure things out. Is Marcus Mariota the guy for this team? Or has he already hit his ceiling? Or are they not using him right? Because Derrick Henry's definitely not having the year he's supposed to have. Dion Lewis is being all right, but that's not cutting it. And I mean, they lost Delanie Walker. I understand that. He was probably their safest bet to be the most consistent player on the team, so you don't have that anymore. And again, defensively, they're not bad. They're a pretty good defensive team, but when your team keeps going 3 and out or getting sacked and can't block, your defense is going to give up 21 points. So Ravens are just doing what they have to do to win, and they've been doing that. And they're losing. When the Ravens lose, they lose close. But the Ravens, they're just one of those teams that they have the experience, especially at quarterback, the coach. They got veterans on that defense that knows what it takes to win. And they're a team that when they get up, it's tough to get back and climb over the lead the Ravens usually get because of the experience. They know how to win games. You know, it's totally different when they're coming from behind. They can do it, but they're a different football team when they have to come from behind. They get that early lead on you. Now, they're not going to beat you 40-10, but they get that early lead, they're just going to grind you and grind you and grind you and grind you and end up beating you like they did yesterday, 21-0. Baltimore Ravens 4-2. Tennessee Titans now 3-3. But 3-3 is still good enough to lead the AFC South. If you look at the Titans, the Jaguars, and the Texans, they're all 3-3. Texans get the win against the Bills, like I mentioned earlier, as well. Ugly game. Texans are winning ugly. I guess that's all that matters, especially early on in the season. But you don't want this trend to continue. At some point, one of these 3 teams, and I say 3 teams because the Colts are out. They're done. Pitchfork. You lost to the Jets, 42-34. And the Jets are on a 2-game win streak. They're 3-3. Wow. Jets in the last 2 weeks, averaging 37 points a game. Scored 48 week 1. This thing might work out with Sam Darnold after all, which I thought it would. It's still early. They're not going to be in the playoffs. Can they win 7 games now? That's a possibility now. They're 3-3. When I thought they were going to be a team that's 5-11 with that's a team that's growing with Sam Darnold. But the Colts, they're done. Pitchfork 1-5. Unfortunately, even though the lead is 3-3, they're only 2 games out. You're not going to catch all 3 teams. You might be able to catch one team, but sooner or later, one of these teams is going to get a 3-game win streak and separate themselves. Is it going to be the Texans? Is it going to be Titans? I doubt it's the Titans. I highly doubt it's the Tennessee Titans. And Jacksonville, figure out what you got to figure out quarterback-wise. Because that's the only thing holding you back. Especially once you get Leonard Fournette back. You have no excuses once you get Leonard Fournette back. I'm giving you that excuse, and that's it. And when I say you, I'm talking about Blake Bortles. Because I've seen enough. I've seen enough from your play to know what you are. You're a bad quarterback that can throw for 300 yards. That's what he does. That's what Blake Bortles does. He fools you when you look at his stats. He's a bad quarterback that makes bad decisions, that goes 3 and out, but he ends up with 300 yards. That's just what happens. Patriots and the Chiefs. My, oh my. What can you say? A game that lived up to its billing. And I talked about it. I said, this is the game of the week. Now, I didn't expect this. This is probably the game of the year so far. This was back and forth. Now, early on, the Patriots, put their stamp on the game. and they were up 24-9, and it was like, this is what the Patriots do. But Patrick Mahomes is like, I don't care. You can be up 34-9. I'm still gonna fight, and I'm gonna score, and I'm gonna hit you over the top with Tyreek Hill, and do you dirty like that. And Patrick Mahomes is the truth. They actually probably should have won this game had he not made those decisions early on in the game. Bad decisions that cost him touchdowns and cost them interception in the end zone because he's trying to force it, because he has the ability to do so, to run, to just twist his body and do whatever he wants. And Kareem Hunt, big game, out the backfield. In the receiving game, he had 80 yards on the ground, but he only had 10 carries. You want to see at least 3 or 4 more carries for Kareem Hunt. That probably makes a little bit of a difference too. But Tom Brady, what can you say? He's still Tom Brady. He's like, anything you can do, I can do better. He's like, okay, you're going to score. You scored a little bit too fast. Why? Because you left over a minute left for me to come down and do something with it. And they did. Came down and did something with it. It was 40-40. Man, Gronkowski came up big in the last 3 minutes. He was average or just nowhere to be seen prior to that. I think he had 1 or 2 catches before that. But then at the end of the fourth quarter, he blew up. He showed you why he's the best tight end in football. Not Kelsey. Gronkowski is still. And still. Kelsey's getting there. But he's just, it's that whole thing where if you're at the 10-yard line and it's 4th and goal, we'll say the 7-yard line, and it's 4th and goal, and you got the option to throw it up in the corner to Gronk or Kelsey, who you going to throw it up to? I'm going to throw it up to Gronk. That's who I want. That's how I decide who's the better tight end right now. Kelsey's getting there, maybe next year. But you can say 1 and 1A, but I'm going to take Gronk. Kelsey might get the better stats, but when it comes to crunch time, I want Gronk. Been there, done that. Tom Brady, been there, done that. 43-40. Wonderful game. The Chiefs are scary, though. More scary they would be if they had a defense, because they're on pace to be the worst defense in NFL history, yardage-wise. That's just a fact. That's just what it is. Can you imagine if they had an average? Let's say they had the 22nd ranked defense. Oh my goodness, they would be dominating. But they're the worst defense. And if you're the Patriots, you showed we can do whatever we want to you. We thought you would give up, but you didn't, because the Chiefs is different, whole different mentality when we talk about Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't care if he's down 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. He's going to play like he's winning. He's going to play with that leadership, with that confidence. There's some throws there that he looks like John Elway. Now, they want to compare him to Brett Favre, quarterbacks like that. But there's some plays with the athleticism where he can just roll out, turn his body, and throw that thing on a rope. Man, he hasn't even got to step into his throws, and it's 60 yards downfield. There was a play there late in the fourth quarter where it's 3rd down, and he has to let it go faster than what he has to because the pocket is collapsing with the blitz. And he just throws it as far as he can to Tyreek Hill. And it wasn't completed, but it was like no other quarterback will be able to throw that ball 30 yards down the field. He did it like 55 with people in his face, not stepping into the throw. He just said, whoop, threw it. Patrick Mahomes is the truth, man. The AFC West better load up. The Chargers, you got Phillip Rivers. That's going to be a battle at the end of the season. In the playoffs, more than likely. But after this year, who's going to... AFC West is Chiefs, even if they don't have a defense. Because all the other teams will not have quarterbacks next year. Phillip Rivers will... To me, this is his last year, his last peak year. Phillip Rivers will fall off next year. When I say fall off, that doesn't mean, 10 touchdowns, 20 picks. But that just means going back to, what Eli Manning's doing this year, basically. This is Phillip Rivers' last chance to do what he's going to do. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. He'll be a good quarterback next year, but right now this is his peak. This is his MVP year. And Patrick Mahomes is going to fight him for that. And Patrick Mahomes is going to be there for the next 10 to 12 years. So the Broncos, Case Keenum's going to keep you at average. Figure out who your next quarterback is after this year. Raiders, definitely figure out who your next quarterback is because Derek Carr and Case Keenum right now are basically the same quarterback. Guys that in the past showed flashes and said these guys can be pretty good, but then this year they're just like, I think more so Derek Carr is like, whatever that is, and Case Keenum is just like, he's lost, he's scared, but still doing what he can. I mean, when you just talk about overall talent, Derek Carr has way more talent than Case Keenum. Let's just be real with it. I just think Case Keenum's a smarter quarterback than Derek Carr. And when you look at just talent, their bodies, and all that, Case Keenum has already taken everything he could from his body to be where he's at. To where these other quarterbacks, like a Derek Carr, I don't even think they've reached their potential, but I just don't think Derek Carr will ever get there. Mentally, he's, you know what. Case Keenum's getting to that mentally because he's too worried about his offensive line. But I'm going to get off of that. It's all about Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. Wonderful game. Might be game of the year. That game was ridiculous. And you can best believe that's probably going to be a matchup in the playoffs. And if you're the Chiefs, you come out saying, okay, Patriots gave us the best shot, even though Tom Brady was like, we didn't punt, but I feel like we didn't play as good as we can. Now, that's scary. Again, Chiefs defense, I mentioned this when the Broncos played the Chiefs before that Monday night game. You should be able to wake up, roll out of bed, and hang 27 on the Chiefs. That's just what you should do. It doesn't matter what team you are. Maybe unless you're the Cardinals, or the Niners, or the Raiders, or the Broncos showed you they could only do 23. The Jacksonville Jaguars showed they could do 14. But the Patriots, they're like, yeah, we can do that, 43. Probably could have done 50. Chiefs probably could have done 50. That could have been a 50-50 game going to overtime. Let's be real with it. That was a wonderful game. That's what the NFL envisioned when you talk about the new rules. But it was a clean played game. When you talk about penalties and all that other junk that's been happening in other games, it's slightly died down, but it still sucks. That rule still sucks. You don't even know what a flag is anymore when you talk about hitting a quarterback. I've seen some quarterbacks like that should be a foul, and they don't call it. So it's I don't know. There's still a lot of gray areas there in my point of view. It's like refs don't even know what the heck's going on. Wonderful game, Sunday Night Football. Hope you guys watched it. Tonight, again, Green Bay Packers, San Francisco 49ers. Should be Packers all the way. LA Dodgers hosting the Brewers here in about an hour, if not a little bit less than that. Get all your snacks ready for this Monday. Tomorrow is going to be Game 4 for the Dodgers and Brewers, Game 3 for the Red Sox and Astros, and so on and so forth. Check your local listings. I'll be back tomorrow with the NBA special that I promised y'all Tuesday, because the season starts in a couple days. Let's be real with it. NBA starting full force, and you guys probably not ready for it. I'm going to try to get you guys ready for it tomorrow with that NBA Fast Break special. And that's the name. So I don't care if anybody else uses that name. That's not your name. That's my name. Okay? So that's tomorrow. NBA Fast Break special. Thank you for joining me here live today. No connection. You must be crazy. Why y'all gotta be doing me like this, man? But, oh, man, I gotta pick up my son. I'm out of here. Fast Break Sports Hour. I'm out. Yeah.